Welcome to Evolving and Adapting Skills Education to Create More Employable US College Graduates. This is a Times Higher Education Roundtable in partnership with Adobe. My name is Alistair Lawrence. I'm the head of branded content at THE, and I'd like to thank you all for joining today's discussion. As I've mentioned, an on-demand recording and a summary article of today's roundtable will be published on the Times Higher website post-event, should you wish to revisit this content or share it with your colleagues. As the higher education sector digital transformation continues, US institutions are being asked to make experiential and project-based learning central to their students' experience, while at the same time building robust student communities, both online and in person. This creates several challenges, not least the need to embed increasing amounts of agility and innovation across their curricula. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Todd Taylor, who is a pedagogical evangelist at Adobe, to tell us a little bit more about how Adobe is working with its university partners to address this. Todd, over to you.
Thank you. Alistair, how long would you like me to talk for this segment?
If you've got maybe 5 minutes or so, and then we'll dive into the main discussion. Sure. That's great.
Great to meet you all. My name is Todd Taylor. My business card for Adobe has the title of pedagogical evangelist, but I am also an English professor at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where I've been since 1997. My area of research, the subject of my dissertation, curricular leadership, innovation, and administration, has looked at how literacy is evolving in response to digital information and network technologies. And so real quickly, what we did at UNC Chapel Hill is that we revised our curriculum with a specific commitment to digital literacy across the curriculum in preparation for all students. And then we leveraged the first-year writing program that I direct to become the threshold experience that every student shared when they came to campus using digital technology tools, specifically Adobe Creative Cloud, to start telling all kinds of stories about what they're studying, what they're learning, the capacities they're developing, and the abilities that they have. And so within that concept, which is known as the Creative Campus Program, we are focused as an equal priority, along with access and equity, about career preparation and agility. And so I'm going to quickly share my screen and have I'm going to browse through some of my thoughts on this subject about skills education and this move, which is international, but it certainly is important in the United States at the moment, about reorienting curricula and student learning outcomes and degree programs around skills or capacities, if you want to call them that, as opposed to credit hours and content. And so that is a potentially very exciting development. But it's of course not that it's easier said than done. And so just some conversation starters and provocations in this conversation about developing skills. To me, it begins with the definitions that you have in mind. And the two primary definitions that I see in operation out there with the campuses I work with around the world are the difference between open capacity and closed capacity. A closed skill is something like training a worker to master a particular task or craft, such as creating a presentation like this one that I created in Adobe Express, whereas an open skill is something that is continually adapting and evolving. And an example would be enabling our students to figure out how to collect and connect research in a narrative that communicates a call to action, as I'm doing with this Adobe Express page. If you don't know about it, there's an organization called the Open Skills Network. It's a network of universities thinking about these very issues and these definitions. This is my sort of transdisciplinary definition of the skill I think every student needs to cultivate and reinforce in every class they take, everywhere across the curriculum. In the information age, students need lots of varied experiences to develop the kinds of agilities they're going to need in this three-step motion: collecting data, information, evidence, or research, connecting the dots among what you collected through analysis, synthesis, study, looking for patterns. And this is where education falls short. And this is what the Adobe Creative Campus Program is all about: having students move from being content consumers to becoming content producers So it's communicating, it's sharing, it's publishing, it's narrating, it's presenting what they're finding that is essential for developing those open capacity abilities that we know are going to need to mutate and adapt to all kinds of changing contexts. What the president of Northeastern has called helping our students become robot proof in the future. This transdisciplinary skill is exactly what they're going to need, regardless of all of those contexts. If I were to point to one skill set that is focused on my area of digital literacy, it would be the ISTE standards from the International Society for Technical Education and Education. And those are some really interesting standards and that can take the form of student learning outcomes and student skills. We also have a study done by Civitas Learning about the impact of creativity and knowledge production on student success, according to classic metrics, and that study is available here through that link. This is a table that I put together on my own that compared the forecasts from the World Economic Forum on the future of jobs and the skills and abilities that people are going to need. This was looking forward from 2010 into 2015, and then 2015 into 2020, and then 2020 into 2025. And what's so radical here is this, and this was done just at the beginning of the pandemic, how radical this list has changed here at the end. All we have to say is artificial intelligence and generative technologies, and we know that the skill set is forever changing. And so those are just some references and some pieces to start the conversation, to think about thinking about skills and exactly how are we defining those skills? How can we cultivate them? What sort of pedagogies are appropriate for promoting them? And then what kinds of students are we configuring or determining and serving in the way we enter these conversations about skills development? So thank you for listening to just our quick overview of how Adobe is partnering with all kinds of institutions of all different kinds of profiles to think about how you want to define the abilities and skills that you want to develop within your curriculum for your students.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Todd. I think before we get started into the main discussion, it's just always nice to introduce ourselves to one another. So I know we're all going to be in slightly different positions on each other's Zoom screens. So I'm going to have to do a bit of an impromptu roll call, I'm afraid, just to pick on you one at a time. Bonnie, if you don't mind going first, if you could just tell us, please, your job title and your institution and the key aspect of your work.
I'm Bonnie Ferry. I'm at Georgia Tech. I'm a Vice Provost for Graduate and Postdoctoral Education. I'm also the Career Center for the campus, reports up through me along with my counterpart at undergraduate. And so I oversee graduate education, including these micro-credentials and the career pathways.
Excellent. Thank you. And Michael?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Aceto. I'm a project manager with the Office of the Vice Provost for Digital Education at Stanford University. And one of the things that I primarily do, and also with my team, is kind of use the lessons from the pandemic and to unify some of the digital strategies and initiatives that are kind of dispersed throughout the university and try to unify them to create more equitable pathways for students to gain access to Stanford resources. So basically trying to take the lessons learned from the pandemic to lean into them rather than lean away. Excuse me, now that we are moving kind of post-pandemic. So thank you so much for inviting me here.
Thank you, Michael. Dr. Pardis?
Hey, everyone. I'm Pardis Madavi. I am the Provost and Executive Vice President of the University of Montana, and deeply engaged and involved at all levels of these discussions here at the University of Montana, as well as Arizona State, which is where I most recently came from, where I had been a dean. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Launa?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Lona Al-Halak, and I'm the Chief Academic Officer at Stanford University. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Roger?
Hello, everyone. My name is Roger Brindley. I am the Vice Provost for Global at the Pennsylvania State University. And my role is to shepherd the broad global footprint of the institution, to reflect on best practice and what we structurally need to do as an institution to prepare for the work of a globally engaged land-grant university.
Great, thank you very much. Lauren?
Good morning, everyone. I'm here on behalf of the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. Our interim executive director was the one that got the invitation, but was unfortunately unable to attend. So I am in her place as the associate director of internship engagement. Like so many of you, just trying to figure out the disconnect that happens from academia to the workplace and trying to figure out what we can do to help prepare our students. So looking forward to the discussion, and thank you.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Tom?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Cavanaugh. I am Vice Provost for Digital Learning and Continuing Education at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. I'm responsible for all of our online and blended and non-credit certificates, including boot camps and things we build ourselves and things we do with partners. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Ciela?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ciela Maximova. I'm a professor in plant sciences in Penn State, the same institution as Roger Brindley. And I currently serve as the director for Latin America and the Caribbean for Penn State Global, and the coordinator for the undergraduate degree in plant genetics and biotechnology. So I interact with students, undergraduate and graduate students at different levels. I teach, but I'm also responsible for program development and strategic initiatives in Latin America and the Caribbean. Namely, now we are working very hard on the Water, Energy, and Food Initiative, which integrates research, education, and also service, and includes all the components that we have been just talking about, you know, a digital education, digital communications, but also education at the different levels that integrate the basic education with the applied and more impactful outcomes of everyone's education.
Great, thank you very much. And last but not least, Sonia? Oh, you're on mute, Sonia.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm Sonia Feigenbaum, and I'm Senior Vice Provost for Global Engagement and Chief International Officer here at the University of Texas at Austin. And essentially, my work really focuses on advancing the mission of global engagement at the institution, working across 18 colleges and schools, ensuring that we have presence and that we support our students and our alumni, and obviously connect them with working opportunities that will allow them to be successful wherever they are located globally.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to start off by touching on something that a few of you mentioned during your introductions, which is the level of digital literacy needed for modern students. So we can get on to how it relates to employability and integrating that in due course. Is there perhaps an assumption that we've got through the pandemic, and so students are digitally literate and everything is as it should be, and whereas the reality is there is still a literacy gap and a skills gap that needs to be addressed through digital education? Pardis, perhaps you can give us your thoughts on this and how you're addressing it at your institution, please.
Sure, and thank you for that. I think that, you know, it's great to hear that we're doing such reflection on the time of the pandemic. At the same time, as we know, you know, digital technology is evolving rapidly. And so one of the things we've been discussing a lot, I'm sure all of you have as well, is of course, ChatGPT. And I think one of the things we've come face to face with is the reality that it's here and it's here to stay. And there's been kind of a refrain of, you know, somebody was reminding us that, well, when the calculator first came, everyone said, oh my gosh, it's going to disrupt, you know, learning and teaching about math. But the reframe of that is, no, it's a tool and we need to teach, you know, students how to use that tool. And so it's the same with ChatGPT. I think what we've now started looking at is, okay, how can we teach students to use these technologies, and also to pause and reflect on how these technologies can be an opportunity for pedagogy. So, how we might have ethics courses, in the humanities around these technologies, how we might, from a social science perspective, look at what networks and what communities are created with these technologies. And then, of course, from a STEM perspective, what do these technologies look like? And yes, Tanya, I definitely agree with you. I mean, they are our friends, and we have an obligation as educators to start to teach students how to engage thoughtfully, critically, problem solving with these technologies, because that's absolutely what students are going to need to be successful in the future. And here at the University of Montana, we work very closely with workforce, because as the public land grant, receiving state allocations, et cetera, we feel a responsibility for educating the workforce, not only of the state of Montana, but of course the region. And as a result, we have very close partnerships with employers as we think about what we're currently undergoing, which is, a general education revision, and as we think about the new curricula that we're building in the academic affairs sector.
And how have those, you mentioned your conversations with employers, has that been a localized conversation, or is it something that's happening with international employers? You have a national and international presence as well?
Exactly. Yeah. National and international presence. I'm really glad that you asked that, Alistair. We have invited employers to the table to be partners in our strategic planning and implementation processes. And as we think about new curricula, before we propose it to our Board of Regents and our governor at the state level, we are actually engaging employers and partners from around the world to say, hey, does this new curricula, and I'll give you two examples of curricula that we've engaged with workforce on. One is our new degree programs. We have a series of new degrees in cybersecurity, which goes really well with the conversation at hand. And we've discussed with our employers, our partners from around the world, what kinds of trainings are we missing? What kind of education would you like to see your students? So cyber is one that we just proposed to our Board of Regents and got passed in November. And criminology is another. What are the needs for looking at things like international crime? What are the things, law enforcement talk about? And so really having it be a collaborative approach to epistemology or to knowledge production. When we think about building, I often say that the job of a provost is, I'm an epistemological architect. When we think about building, an ecosystem of innovation and an ecology of interdisciplinarity, what are we really looking at, and how can we be collaborative in preparing students both with the critical thinking and problem solving skills and the tools that they're going to need, things like digital learning, to be successful and to meet the needs of today's workforce.
Great, thank you. I suppose my next question to the panel is, have they found it easier or more difficult to find a reliable student voice in this? When you have so many options, when you break down the barriers of being able to offer digital education, is there a risk that you almost have too many options and you have to decide quite quickly the best course of action in terms of how are we going to broaden our curricula? What are the new subjects that we're going to introduce? I mean, are those conversations taking place at your institutions? And if so, are they ongoing? How advanced are they?
Well, strategic planning saying, well, it's just about preparing faculty. Well, I think it was very challenging how to prepare our team to be ready for all the new technology, and even with ChatGPT, students become very fast about how they adapting, writing, answering assignment question, discussions, and all this. So how we can help our faculty to understand what's going on. So I think that's the main issue now we are working on.
Okay, and then that process of educating faculty, Lana, has that been something that's what shape does that take at your institution?
Well, it's all about how to be preparing faculty for helping students to have a better experience with all to prepare them for the workforce, how we can help them with finding job after graduation, how we can use literate technology about using the latest technology, how we can be adapted to what the workplace happening and what the requirements need for industrial certification or maybe creating an entrepreneurship. So it's all has to be prepared with our team before moving forward with our student.
Excellent, thank you. come to you next, and then Bonnie after that. But feel free to use the raised hand emoji on Zoom. I know it's kind of hard to democratize calls such as this, but Sonia, please go ahead.
Well, I think the way we've been dealing with this is to look at centralization as a means to allow us to coordinate all of the efforts that will allow for our students to have access. So I'll give you an example. We have a Texas Career Engagement entity that provides students free access to several of the Coursera programs that result in course and professional certifications. So these company design certifications really include Grow with Google, IBM, Meta. And with this kind of in-demand industry skills are actually much better prepared for the future of work. We also have created a course that's essential skills for immersion series. And this really responds to your question. Are there too many opportunities out there? The communications internally, the fact that the various colleges and schools work together to connect to our career advancement center really makes a huge difference. And that's how we've been able to really channel our students in a direction where they will get the knowledge that they need to supplement the work that will be taking place in a highly technologically advanced environment. So I don't want to take away from my colleagues here, but essentially I think the coordination is really important, and offering courses that are very structured and connected to what's missing in order to be ready for the workforce internationally is really important. We also provide globally using our alumni to advance that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Sonia. Bonnie, can you tell us a little bit how the careers function is shifting at Georgia Tech, and also your own background in the STEM subject? STEM subjects have been cast under the spotlight a bit whenever you start to talk about employability and skills gaps and things like that.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention along those lines is looking at degree creation and curricular design, and driven by these upcoming skills. You mentioned before about like cybersecurity, what are the upcoming places and where does this come in? It usually comes in really at the master's degrees, because that's the most agile area. And so people come up with a lot of different interdisciplinary degrees that are industry facing and that respond to some of these areas. And so some of the ways that we've been looking at this is, where is the demand? And there's demand from a couple of different things. One is like the industry partners, like the advisory panels, which are oftentimes very high level. And then there's also going to like the career center type of thing, the front end. These are the people that are going to hire people. And sometimes there's a disconnect between what the people at the very high levels in the corporation say and what is happening at the people that are actually hiring people. And so really one of the things we've looked at is, when you're creating a new degree to meet these things, there's the title. Is the title meaningful? And then the other thing is, what skills are they teaching? A lot of times when you create these master's degrees, new master's degrees or new degrees, oftentimes you're trying to cobble together some courses that you already have, and it's driven by the faculty, but it really helps to have this backward design and saying, what is the industry looking for? If you look not only at what the people at the top are saying, but look at the job postings and look at the skills that they're saying in these job postings. If they say project management is something that people in that sector you're trying to address, if that's what they say is needed, then that should be something that you build into the curriculum when you design that. And so this is really trying to look at that, and this being from my STEM background, I'm a professor in electrical and computer engineering. But this is like how you design these curricula to have those sorts of skills. And then also when you think about industry facing and how you teach the classes, is it more helpful to have courses that are kind of theory based, which might be helpful, like here's the theory, here's problem solving from a book, or is this something helpful like here's a case study that you might find in industry like, here's a problem, let's talk about how you'd solve this. So that's more of a problem-based, project-based approach to the teaching that might be more transferable to when people actually get out and start working.
You mentioned that the master's program is perhaps more pliable in this regard because you have better interactions with the students and with industry. Do you think, I mean, it's, you know, no one's got a crystal ball, we can't see into the future, but do you think there's a point where even that may become too rigid a structure and you're forced to offer continued education or skills-based education that's broken down into smaller chunks?
Definitely smaller chunks. I mentioned about the master's, and partly because of it's so hard at the undergraduate level to create new degrees. There's accreditations, there's the core, there's a lot more constraints on it. And that's why there's a little bit more flexibility at the master's space to create to be more agile at that space. But certainly the credentials, and there's been some interesting work on, like, what do these credentials, people want to put names on things, badges, digital badges and things like that. But there was a study on that looking from industry saying, what does this mean to you? And the people that are hiring students, it means something if the name means something. So if they're trying to hire somebody in a certain field and they put that they've got some sort of badge or credential in that area and it sounds like the job, it means something. And if it's also from a reputable place, it means something. But a lot of people, there's a lag between what we think employers want and their understanding of that field. And what those credentials, those micro credentials mean.
Okay, thank you. Tom, can I come to you next to ask about your role as Vice Provost of Digital Learning at Central Florida? I mean, how much of evolution are you seeing in real time in terms of what's needed for digital education?
Well, certainly demand continues to grow. Here at UCF, we're a large school, maybe only smaller than ASU, and that the growth has mostly been driven by online learning over the last 10 years because the campus infrastructure is sort of capped at what it can sustain. So, we've always seen growth, but I think kind of coming out of COVID accelerated that growth. And kind of to your previous question, we've been approached by a number of programs that historically I've been working on for 10 plus years and not been able to make much progress. Now suddenly we've got online programs in optics and in some of the more traditional STEM fields, because through COVID they realized they could do these things that they previously didn't think they could do. Assisting that also is a new RCM budget model that we've implemented that is really incenting the colleges to try to grow credit hours, and they see online as an opportunity to do that. And maybe more directly answering your question though, we are seeing more and more interest in things like short courses and micro credentials and certificates, things like our boot camps that have been really successful. And these are very practical, workforce-oriented kinds of programs. And in many cases, students come in with degrees, right? They've got like a bachelor's degree or something, and they're looking to make a career change or to find a job or improve or whatever the case might be. And those have grown. So we're in the process of exploring other opportunities to try to create certificates, whether they're stackable for credit or non-credit, things that have some sort of workforce currency, something that means something on a resume or on a LinkedIn profile, or something that they can use to advance their professional goals. So I definitely see that part of the ecosystem growing in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Roger, if we come to you next, please, I'm interested in your thoughts about what you think the impact of this is on global student communities. As much as things are localized by a single institution, you're also now have greater opportunities to work with students around the world and bring them into your college, your culture, your infrastructure. How do you see that changing?
Thanks, Alistair. And I've been loving listening to the conversation, making lots of notes here. I think it's a cloudy picture, Alistair. Some things are clearly working to our benefit here. We're certainly, there was a commentary there about curricular alignment. We're certainly thinking more about micro-credentials and badges, stackable degrees, multiple entry and exit ways, opportunities to use both in residence and online learning in various modal ways. And I think that's exciting. I think that increases access for international students into our experiences. And of course, that is intensely digital in nature. I also think there are opportunities to build new essential skills. I think Dr. Madhavi spoke beautifully to that. And I think we also need to recognize that increasing numbers of our international students, particularly those from the South Asian nations now, are looking for optional practice training. They're looking to come to the United States for dual intent. And so we need to reflect that in the way we think about our business and industry linkages around digital communication and opportunities, experiential learning, and certainly how we think about our work with alumni. So that's the good news, right? Things that worry me. I do worry on the flip side of curriculum integration that curriculum is held and cherished by the faculty. It's cherished by the faculty because they see themselves as the stewards of their discipline, and quite rightly too. But that means it often is not nimble or agile to change. And so we have opportunities now, particularly coming out of Zoom, because all our faculty in the blink of an eye had to go online to teach. And so they've learned the core experiences and skills of pedagogies online. We have opportunities now to bring more of the sort of COIL style electronic and digital communication across classes. Our tenure and promotion processes at universities tend to silo research and teaching. And I think that's the detriment in a digital age. When my faculty are doing remarkable overseas data collection, are presenting with colleagues from an overseas institution, I want those overseas colleagues to be finding their way back to the classroom. And I want them to open that up to the students in their classrooms so the students can learn and construct their own knowledge around that, right? And so digital can help us here, but our rewards and recognition systems have to help as well, because faculty will do what they're rewarded for. Going outside the United States, I still worry that countries are not quite ready for some of this discussion. We see under the new education policy of India, this wonderful opportunity for Indian students to bring in credit earned at institutions outside of India. But we still know the Indian authorities will not accept an online degree or a degree by an outside university in country that is predominantly delivered online. And just last week, the Chinese authorities reasserted that very point coming out of COVID and how Chinese higher education thinks about online and digital learning. So we've got a lot of work to do in the international folio of this work, but and so I'm a little tempered and balanced in what I want to say, Alistair, but certainly there are opportunities for us to learn the lessons of COVID, as Tom was talking about, and to really push on in how we think about appropriate, authentic, organic engagement for our students so that they can construct their learning and their understanding alongside us. And we see that a lot of that in flipped classroom work already, but I think there's far more to come.
It's interesting you make the point about India and China, because those are, along with Africa and Southern Asia, they tend to be the main areas now where, you know, higher education superpowers such as the US, the student paths into the US from those regions, it seems to be increasingly under scrutiny. Do you think universities still need to find that balance between getting the international offering right in terms of digital education, but also looking at things on a regional and national level in terms of, you know, we spoke right at the top of the hour about what type of employers that you're engaging with, and this can be everything from people on a local level to big multinational tech companies.
Yeah, you know, I think each institution has its own vision and mission, Alistair. I can only speak for a land grant. My mission says I need to be engaged in the community. My mission tells me that there are 600 million Indians under 25 years old. A quarter of the planet under 25 years old lives in India. When I speak to Indian authorities, the first, second, third, and fourth word is upskilling. And question that I have to ask my colleagues is, what is our role in that? How do we partner in ways that are culturally responsive and appropriate for our colleagues in India? And so I just use India as an example to answer your question, but we need to think about that. You know, what is our responsibility as an institution? I'm going slightly outside the digital discussion here, but it's extraordinarily expensive for the average citizen on this planet to come to a US university. The average GDP in the world today is less than $13,000. So what is our responsibility around access to higher education? Those are the kinds of questions that I want to ask myself. And I ask myself that in the context of digital learning and how effective we can be in broadening the scope and the opportunity for literally billions of young and aspirational people.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Michael, can I come to you next just to get your thoughts on how you've seen digital spaces for higher education change and where you think the direction of travel is in regards to what your colleagues have said today?
Sure. And again, thank you so much for this conversation. There's been a lot of points that have really resonated with me, especially some of the comments that Roger just made about what is a university's responsibility toward their community. And here at Stanford, and specifically with my team, we acknowledge that our role in the Bay Area as one of the largest employers in the region, we do have a role and responsibility to play to really broaden the scope of what education can be to students, not only within our walls, but outside of them as well. So one of the things that we've been primarily working on has been kind of reimagining what a pathway program could look like for a Stanford student or a non-Stanford student, and kind of thinking about what are some of the levers that we need to pull before a student even gets to Stanford, or not even to Stanford, but just an institution of higher learning in general. So we've been kind of looking at more of leveraging technology in terms of broadening pathways and access to higher education to high school students, and figuring out ways that we can inspire, especially students who are underserved in our communities, to pursue degrees of higher education, especially in fields that we know are going to lead them to potentially in-demand jobs. So one of the programs that we've been working on has been a partnership with National Education Equity Lab, which is a nonprofit that basically partners with universities to provide 4-credit courses to Title I high school students in the United States. So we've been working on this program for about 2 years now. We served a few, I think close to 1,000 students now over several courses. And one of the most successful courses we've run has been a computer science course that is run from one of our professors, Dr. Patrick Young. And the engagement that we've seen in these courses, especially from these students, has been quite inspiring, actually. I think that we've redefined what we traditionally think of as, what is success outside of a letter grade. I think, the skills and the confidence that we are providing these students at such a young age, especially in such vulnerable positions, I think, really does pay dividends down the road in terms of inspiring students to, pursue these higher, educational degrees, and, providing them with support and from our alumni association and others at the university that will also provide them with, some extra layers of support that I think that, they otherwise wouldn't have ever gained. And one of the things that we're also looking to do is work with community colleges. I think that community colleges are a very, their positions, their institutions of learning that I feel are somewhat underserved in our communities as well. They are usually serve a number of students that are looking to, pursue career and technical education programs, looking to, find upskilling opportunities so they can enter the job market directly out of high school. And I think, some of the work that we've been doing with them has been exploring ways that we can support some of the programs that they're already offering. So we are working with some corporations like, Grow with Google to potentially figure out ways that we can use some of their career certificates, specifically in data analytics, to hopefully provide those students with an enhanced experience, especially as those career certificates are slowly spreading throughout the community college curriculum and are becoming very popular, especially in areas of project management, IT, and also data analytics. So we're looking to support the faculty who are providing these certificates while also providing the students with some project-based learning opportunities at Stanford and Google as well, that will hopefully lead them to direct employment after the certification as well. So I think the reimagining of what a student can be and what our responsibility is as an institution is broad. And there are a lot of things that Stanford is doing well for their own students, but I think my team specifically is looking at how broad can we go in terms of our impact on our own region and potentially other students in the US as well. So, but yeah, this has been a lot of the points that have been already said, I resonate with as well. So, but our mission has also been to look at what we can do through an equitable lens to broaden access to education for any student who seeks it.
That's interesting, Michael. When you speak about community colleges, are you talking about engaging with them on the 2+2 model, or is it more granular than that, or focused on more shorter engagements?
So it really depends. We're still at the very early stages of working with the community colleges. I think we're primarily looking at students who are looking to find more accelerated pathways to employment as they're going through their community college space. So these certifications are what we've been primarily looking at, but I think there is opportunity to we've been in conversations with a few community colleges to even partner to create this idea of this triple enrollment aspect where we work with community colleges, high school districts, and also employers to create some sort of direct pathway that students can engage with when they're in their 11th or 12th year of high school, to create a dual, to have opportunities to take credit-bearing coursework at the community college level, while also having the opportunity to gain some internship opportunities or research opportunities at Stanford that may also primarily lead them into a career pathway as well. So we're really at the beginning stages of exploring what that would look like, but there seems to be a lot of interesting and enthusiastic engagement from our partners so far.
Okay, great, thank you, Todd. You've dropped a shared resource in the chat there. I was wondering if you could just give us a brief overview of what's on that document.
Sure. The second piece that I put in the chat was a talk that I gave at the Texas Community College Teachers Association that Adobe has a very close partnership with. And to hear their conversations about skills, it's more of what Michael was talking about in the latter, in terms of not necessarily closed capacity skills, but something that is directly in demand today. And so many of our leading universities have been, based upon the liberal arts tradition, where you're developing, agile capacities that can adapt to all different kinds of technologies and futures. It's very interesting to think about the way we design curricula, the student experience, and our attachment to developing these abilities from the lens of someone who may only be in higher education for a year or two. And so that's an interesting model to think about, and to literally hear their stories that can be, unfortunately, a very long distance away from what many of us had in terms of our experiences in higher education. And so that's a really important part of my curricular leadership and Adobe's partnership with education is recognizing that statistically there are more students in 2- and 4-year degree programs than there are at the big universities that we often work at. And so to see things from their perspective and be responsive and in designing and reimagining all these opportunities from that perspective is something I think we can't do enough of. And so that's what that resource was about. It was a conversation we were having at that conference of community college instructors.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank you also to Tom for the link that you've shared in the chat there. I'd just like to come to Lauren, if I may. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the internship engagement that you do at USC and what the current state of affairs is with that. I mean, does much of what's been spoken about in terms of increasing access, does that resonate with what you're seeing with offering more internship opportunities? And also I'd be interested to get your thoughts on what more you think needs to be done.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. So I think, yes, there's definitely more that needs to be done. I think our challenge, like so many of you, we're larger institutions, decentralized, and just trying to balance that has been challenging. But certainly, what can we do to create an environment that makes internships equitable to all populations, all students? And that's something that we are working on. There's still a lot of progress that can be done, but at this point, we're really just trying to collect information, see what we can do. We've heard a lot with different pathways, different ways to have it rise to different levels of the cabinet. Right now, we still report into student affairs. I know in other models, they report through the provost or other units. And so that's something that we are working towards, and just trying to see what can we do to have that larger presence in better coordination also within academic affairs.
Okay, and giving the students voice within that, I mean, how important is it for you have you changed the way that you collect feedback from students after internships?
Again, with the decentralized model, it makes it harder. A lot of times they're reporting it to their individual schools, and we're trying to get that information. Internships are not a formalized process here, and of the probably 200 plus majors, only a small handful even require internships for graduation, and that's collected at the academic unit. I'm fortunate that I do teach an internship course, so I see a small segment of that, but would certainly want to expand that to the broader university community in order to get a better handle on that. But we certainly have our work cut out for us. But appreciate learning about some of the other different models and what's happening. So hopefully can align in the future.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like it. Thank you. So we've spoken about some engagement with employers, and also the change that's going on, not just around teaching and assessment, but also around including access. Perhaps as we look towards the latter stages of the typical student journey, there's an area in which the US is traditionally strong compared to other large higher education offering countries, which is alumni engagement. And that is something that has been seen more and more as moving central to a university's mission when it starts to look at things like student employability and offering a really robust lifelong learning provision. I see a few nodding heads, which is always dangerous because it just makes me want to pick on people who are agreeing with the point. But perhaps, Sonia, if I can come to you to get your thoughts on how alumni engagement is changing at Texas, and again, what more you think perhaps needs to be done to optimize it.
I think my colleagues will all agree that there's no one size fits all, and we're all at different stages of development. Whether it's what Lauren just mentioned regarding the creation of the engagement with career services and so forth. When it comes to alumni relations at UT Austin, we've been very proactive in engaging with our alumni that are located all over the world, and to have conversations with them and cultivate these conversations so that they're aware that they are our ambassadors and that they can support us in creating opportunities for our students that are at UT right now, or that are have graduated from UT and are interested in various global opportunities. And so we're doing this systematically. We created what was called a global career launch opportunity that is essentially a multi-pronged program that gives our students really a window into working at various companies around the world based on the connections that we have with our alumni. We're also using our faculty to be the connectors between the alumni that are located abroad and that are connected to various large corporations or small nonprofit organizations, so that we have diversity of opportunities for our students. And we're also providing funding and raising funds for scholarships for these students, because as some of my colleagues have mentioned, and if not all of them, access is extremely important to us. So essentially, it is a work in progress. We created this. I created this about actually 3 years ago. Even during the pandemic, we made some great strides, and we're continuing to increase our engagement with our alumni. But we're also really taking into consideration the fact that our faculty have connections all over the world, and that these connections and these linkages can be also strengthened by the alumni that are located globally. We have about 560,000 alumni, and like most institutions in the US, many of us will say, well, we have those numbers, but have we really engaged with them in the way that we should have all along? And we're working on that. And so far it's been successful, but it's a labor of love, and it's laborious.
Okay, thank you. Sierra, I haven't come to you yet. Apologies. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your regional brief and whether that resonates with the discussion that we're having about alumni engagement, whether it's changing for LATAM and the Caribbean in your case.
Yes. So our approach to projects and establishing networks in Latin America and the Caribbean definitely includes alumni engagement. And as you know, Penn State has one of the largest, maybe some of you know, one of the largest alumni associations, and it's very active. In fact, I think the statistics are there. One of every 123 graduates from higher education in the United States have graduated from Penn State. So it's really a large group of people, and it's a huge opportunity. So in terms of how do we engage alumni in the Latin America region, we are just starting to actually advance in that direction. So we are trying first to establish alumni chapters in all the different countries that we are working with, our priority countries like Colombia, Peru, Argentina, Chile, Ecuador, and Mexico. But it's very interesting because a lot of the alumni, especially in some of the, like in Colombia, there's a lot of Penn State graduates, and also in Ecuador, and they do have their own little chapters and clubs, but we find that we haven't been really reaching out to them in a proactive way. And so now we are actually focusing on that and trying to communicate to them our goals and what our strategic initiatives are, and they've been very responsive. So from that perspective, I think alumni are really important for us because they are our allies, our partners, potential funders. And so our strategy does involve definitely reaching out to them.
Okay.
I know this is a little bit of a distraction, but I just want to go back a little tiny bit to the student experience, if that's okay.
Of course.
And it has to do something with something a little bit different than just, how do we use digital education to prepare our students for their future jobs? But I want to talk a little bit of a case study and something a process that I'm involved with right now, which involves reimagining the curriculum for the applied sciences major at Penn State. And so in that process, what we have been considering now is that the digital era, this new digital tools are providing us with opportunities to connect a lot more with the satellite, sorry, that's the wrong word, with our Commonwealth colleges, which Penn State has like 23 of them. And so in our case, what happens is students from the Commonwealth colleges will take few classes a semester or 2 semesters, and they have an opportunity to move to main campus where there's a lot more opportunities for majors and classes. But because of the way the distances and the way the system is created, it's been somewhat difficult. So what we are doing now in our new curriculum, we are trying to integrate more online and digital options for students so they could take those gen ed classes that they can use and they could transfer to University Park, which in the past hasn't been a possibility for us. Which also brings my other point that just because we've gone through COVID and everybody had online classes, that doesn't mean that students are really equipped to take and to use and utilize the tools to be online and to take full advantage of this online courses. In fact, in one of my classes right now, I figured out that the graduate students that are assigned to run the Zoom, they don't even know how to use it. And just because we have all been on Zoom or Google, that doesn't mean that we have to assume that all of our students have this, digital literacy. So with that said, thinking about what are the skills and the digital skills students need to have to get their jobs in their fields is one thing, but we also really need to think about what are the skills they need during their college time and be successful and be able to take advantage of all the online tools during their college career. So that's kind of where I wanted to go, just to bring a little bit more into the discussion on how universities use digital technology more efficiently and to increase the impact and provide better educational opportunities to students within their organizations. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to derail. I was trying to.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Todd, you put some thoughts in the chat there. We're very, very close to time, and I'm aware people will have 10 a.m. meetings, midday meetings, 1 p.m. meetings, wherever they are across the US right now. If you could perhaps just give us a very brief summary of that, and then I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap things up.
Absolutely. I was responding to the question before this about how does the voice of the student enter into all these conversations about determining these strategic directions. And what I'm seeing out there is people not actually listening to the literal students, but the data trails they leave, to the choices they're making about where they enroll, how they go through a program, what resources they need along the way, and then ultimately, increasingly, where do they land beyond the campus, right? And especially as we're evolving into more lifelong learners, where we want those students to come back and take additional programs, especially for instance at the master's level. That's what I'm seeing out there. I am also really glad that we brought up the issue of the student experience in terms of pedagogy. I mean, just because it's digitally delivered doesn't mean it's necessarily any more engaging or successful. It's the pedagogical strategies that I think are a big lever in making this all come together.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. But again, thank you all so much for joining us from across the country and sharing your expertise and your knowledge. I hope you found it useful and as interesting as I have. As I say, there will be an on-demand version of this discussion if you'd like to revisit any of the points that were made or distribute it with colleagues if you think that's helpful. Then there's also going to be a summary article too, because we appreciate, sadly, not everyone has another hour to revisit all of the points that were made across the discussion. But thank you all very much for joining us. There will be more roundtables and webinars from Times Higher that are coming virtually and in person across the year. So we hope very much to be able to see you again at our events between now and then. So enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you and goodbye.